Resident Evil Outbreak always stood out to me for how big it tried to be. It gave us regular people fighting to survive the collapse of Raccoon City, a full roster of characters with their own small strengths, and scenarios that felt like different corners of the same disaster. Even now, the scale of what it tried to do is pretty massive. So, what was Resident Evil Outbreak? Outbreak came out during a kind of weird stretch of the early 2000s, where everybody seemed excited about playing games online, even though most people didn't really have the setup for it yet. A lot of homes still ran on dial-up, broadband was growing, but it wasn't something you could count on yet. The PS2 had a huge audience, although only a small part of that group ever bought the network adapter. So you had this era where console online gaming existed, although it still felt like something people were figuring out as they went. Capcom was moving through the same kind of uncertainty. They had Resident Evil locked in as a big franchise, and they were juggling all kinds of ideas inside the company. Some teams were deep into early versions of Resident Evil 4, others were experimenting with new genres and online features. Outbreak came from that mix. Capcom had a small push towards network games, and this project became the survival horror branch of that effort.
You startled me. I'm surprised you're still alive.
The people building Outbreak had a clear direction from the start. They wanted to show Raccoon City through the eyes of everyday people. Not elite agents or people with special training, just regular people caught in the kind of situation nobody prepares for. They ran early tests where multiple players had to survive against zombies in small areas. And those tests showed something kind of interesting. The people playing acted on instinct. Some hoarded items, some tried to help, some sprinted ahead and hoped for the best. The team realized that these small reactions could drive the tone of the entire game, and that idea became one of the foundations of Outbreak. From there, the team started building scenarios that felt like small stories happening around the same time as Resident Evil 2 and 3. Each scenario focused on a different part of the city and a different angle of the outbreak. The intention was to keep them short enough to finish in one setting and then jump out. It made Outbreak feel like you were flipping through a collection of moments from people who were never meant to be at the center of this disaster. And I feel like the cast really reflects that idea. You had a cop with a basic level of training, a reporter chasing leads, and several others who felt like you might actually find living in the city. Their small abilities were tied to who they were, and the game used that to give each scenario a different rhythm depending on the team you brought in.
Hey! Hey you! Huh? What? No shit.
Online play shaped a lot of the experience. Instead of voice chat, the game used short phrases and signals to keep everyone inside the atmosphere. The developers wanted communication to feel like something happening inside the moment rather than a distraction. Sessions were built around quick cooperation, shared stress, and figuring things out together without a lot of discussion. It created this sense of moving through danger with people you barely knew, which fit the setting pretty well, I feel. Different regions handled the online side in different ways, and that shaped how people remember the game. Some had full access to online features and talked about intense runs through scenarios with strangers. Others only played offline and didn't get that same energy. The gap between those experiences left Outbreak in a mixed reputation. Although the heart of the game stayed the same, you still had the fixed camera angles, you still had inventory management, you still felt that slow rise of tension every time the corner came up. The frame was familiar even if the perspective was new. Looking back, you can see how Outbreak formed inside a crossroads for both the industry and the series. Developers were learning how to build online features, console hardware was still catching up, and Capcom was moving through a phase full of experiments. Outbreak sat right in the middle of all that. It aimed for something forward-leaning and tried to explore survival horror in a way the series hadn't touched before. And the scale of that idea, the focus on regular citizens and the way it approached Raccoon City from the street level, gave the game a clear identity that still feels unique even when you play it today.
Get out!
Raccoon City takes on a different presence in Outbreak. The game places you in small corners of the city during its final stretch, and each scenario shows a different layer of that collapse. You start picking up on the mood of the place through its environments, and the way people respond to what's happening around them. The city feels tense in a way that settles in slowly, and that feeling becomes the center of the experience.
Hey, you!
The layout of the scenarios play into this. Each one sits in its own pocket of the city. Some areas feel like they're dealing with the first signs of trouble. Others feel like they've been overwhelmed for a while. You move from bars to labs to universities, and each space carries a different level of pressure. The tone shifts between locations in a way that paints the larger picture without calling attention to the structure behind it. The atmosphere builds through these scattered viewpoints. Streets look worn down from panic, rooms show signs of rushed decisions. Hallways feel tight because of the leftover scramble from whoever tried to get out. These details give the sense that the outbreak pushed through the city in uneven waves. Some places had time to react, others didn't. And by stepping through these areas one at a time, you start forming an understanding of the city's condition without the game actually spelling it out for you.
Leak the gas and use it to burn these bastards! Do it now! Ah!
This approach brings the survivors into a different light. They feel like regular people caught in situations that were already moving before they arrived. Their presence gives each scenario a human anchor, but the environment carries most of the weight. Every room, street, or facility feels like it has its own short history. You can sense the struggle in the way the objects are placed, the way doors are blocked, or the way lighting falls across a space that was never meant for this kind of pressure. As you move deeper into the game, the city becomes easier to read. You start picking up on which areas reach their breaking point early and which ones were holding out longer than expected. The shifts between scenarios creates a rhythm that makes Raccoon City feel wide and unstable. The city feels like it's reacting to the outbreak in real time, and each scenario adds another piece of that larger moment. And by the end, you get a clear impression of what the city was going through during its collapse. Outbreak doesn't rely on one storyline to show you that. It lets the environments and the changing tone across locations build that picture. You see a city dealing with pressure that never lets up, and the way each area absorbs that pressure gives Outbreak its identity. That structure feels natural once you settle into it, and the city becomes the thing you remember the most. At first, the mechanics were kind of confusing to me, but after you spend some time with the game, it starts to make sense. You see what the game expects from you, and the way it handles tension becomes clearer. The systems are simple on the surface, but they add pressure in a steady, noticeable way as you move through each scenario. The communication system stands out first. You only have a few preset lines, and they cover the basics, but that's about it. Just the come here, or go there, or wait. Most of the time, though, the group moves without much back and forth, and the lack of detailed communication creates a kind of uncertainty. You watch what your teammates do more than you listen to them, and that shapes the pace of each run. The inventory system creates another layer of pressure. You only have like 4 slots with most characters, so every pickup forces a small decision. Herbs, ammos, keys, tools, they all matter. You end up looking in your inventory a lot, trying to decide what you're willing to carry into the next room. When teammates offer items, the small choices stack up even more. These decisions come up pretty often, and they add a steady amount of tension to the experience.
Did you find it?
The infection gauge adds time pressure. It goes up as you take hits or move throughout the game. It continues rising no matter what, unless you find one of the pills that pauses it for a little bit. But once you notice the gauge, you keep checking it. That awareness changes how you approach the scenario. You start pushing forward more quickly and avoiding situations that force you onto the ground. The gauge sets a pace that you feel even when the environment seems safe.
I think you're right. Everything dies! I think you're right.
The characters themselves reinforce the grounded tone. They move like regular people. Their swings, their reloads, and their reactions, they all feel like actions done under stress. Nothing looks exaggerated. The animations and movement give the impression of people trying to manage a situation they're not prepared for, which fits the structure of the game. When all these mechanics line up, Outbreak gains a specific rhythm. You move from room to room with a constant sense of limited resources, rising infection, and teammates who may or may not respond the way you expect. The game doesn't rely on big set pieces to create stress, like the RPD or the Spencer Mansion. The system does most of the work. They create small decisions that build into a steady feeling of pressure. And after a few scenarios, the way the game handles survival becomes clear. The tension comes from managing the basics while trying to stay ahead of the infection and keeping an eye on your partners. Outbreak's mechanics define the experience more than anything else, and the feeling they create become the main takeaway for each run. Hey, just real quick, I want to take a second and say thank you for being here. If you're still here watching the video, it really means a lot. This channel's been growing in a way I never expected, and we're really close to 10,000 subs. The channel's also almost a year old now. I never expected to make it this far in 1 year. But since we're here, I'd like to try to hit 10K before the year ends. But if we don't, I do feel like we're going to end up really close to it. But either way, I really appreciate every single one of you that's helped me build this. It really means a lot. If you're enjoying the video, consider subbing. I'm trying to build an archive and keep these games alive, one game at a time. And a like or a comment helps a lot too. Let me know if you ever played Resident Evil Outbreak, or what your memories are with it. Or if you're seeing this for the first time, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and I try to respond to a lot of them. And for anyone watching on mobile, there's a little hype button. Tapping it gives the video hype points, which helps it get pushed into the algorithm more. It essentially tells YouTube, hey, this video is good, push it to more people. It's a way that you can directly help grow the video. But let's get back into Outbreak and why online and offline feel like two completely different games. So you'll notice almost immediately that Outbreak feels different depending on whether you play online or offline. It's the same scenarios, the same rules, the same characters, but the way everything plays out changes because of how the AI behaves when you're not online, or with another person. When you play offline, the AI partners handle most of the basic actions. They'll pick up items, toss out short voice lines, and attack whatever gets close. They follow you through each area, but they don't read situations the way people do. They drift, they stop in odd places, and then sometimes grab items that would have been more useful in your hands. You end up watching them more than you expect. There's a constant little worry that they might pull a room in the wrong direction or miss something important. Their reactions during combat add another layer to that. They fire late and they fire early, or they engage something that they should just run from. Sometimes they run right past you to grab an item in the middle of danger. It keeps you on edge in a way that isn't loud or dramatic. It's more of a steady awareness that you need to account for whatever they decide to do. You learn their habits over time, but they never fully feel predictable. That unpredictability becomes part of the offline experience, which can be a frustrating one.
Please help!
Item management shifts a lot too. AI partners will grab things without checking if the group needs them. They'll carry herbs or ammo and hold on to them until the end of the scenario. You don't get much control over that. It turns the inventory system into a bit of a gamble. You hope they're carrying something useful, and you hope they hand it over when you ask. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The whole system forces you to work with whatever you get.
Please, I need it.
Here.
Co-op sits in the opposite end of that. When you play with real people, the flow of the game changes immediately. Item sharing becomes quicker, people communicate through movement or short phrases in ways the AI never matches. You see teammates clearing space, trading items, and planning routes on instinct. The group moves with a shared sense of pressure, and you feel the difference as soon as the scenario starts.
Is anyone down there?
The infection gauge also lands a bit harder in co-op. Real players react to the rising infection in different ways. Some rush ahead, some slow down to keep the group together. The AI doesn't show that kind of awareness. It moves at a steady pace no matter what's happening. In multiplayer, the infection turns into a group decision instead of something you track alone.
May I have it, pretty please?
Fighting the enemies change with real players too. People improvise in ways the AI can't. A teammate might push a zombie out of the way, lure an enemy down a hall, or use items creatively. The scenarios start forming small moments that feel unscripted. Offline, those moments don't happen. The AI sticks to simple patterns, and the fights feel more mechanical. The overall pace is the biggest difference. Offline runs have a slower, heavier feel. You spend time watching the AI, adjusting around them, and trying to work with their limitations. Multiplayer brings more movement. Players make quicker choices, people talk through actions with simple commands or gestures. Even with limited communication tools, the flow becomes clearer and more coordinated. Both modes follow the same rules, but the experience shifts depending on who you're with. Offline feels like managing a small group under pressure. Multiplayer feels like a shared effort with people who react to the map the moment they see it. The mechanics stay the same, and the feeling behind them changes based on behavior of the team. Outbreak leans into both styles, and the game takes on a different shape depending on which one you settle into.
Here's what I'm thinking.
The more time you spend with each character, the more you see how much thought went into their roles. Each character has something they're good at, and that one strength shapes the entire run in small ways. They feel like different approaches to the same problem, and the game leans on that idea from the start of it. Every character brings their own specialty. Some have stronger melee swings, some handle guns in a cleaner way. Others carry extra items or move through rooms with a little more control. These differences aren't labeled as classes, but they act that way once you understand them. You pick someone and the scenario shifts towards what that person handles well. It gives the game a simple kind of personality system without turning into something complicated.
You made it! Get out! Hurry!
The abilities show up in small moments. You notice a stronger character pushing an enemy back a little further, or you see someone reload faster than the rest of the group. A character with better inventory management keeps the team supplied longer. These things change the pace of the scenario without feeling forced. They give you reasons to try different people, because each one brings a slightly different flow to the map. Outbreak also gives you a lot of bonus characters to unlock. The game awards points based on how you play, and those points open up alternate versions of the cast. You start seeing a bigger range of options as you unlock these versions, and it stretches the replay value in a natural way. The game rewards you for playing the scenarios over and over, and the extra characters keep that loop interesting. Another part of the system sits in the background of each scenario. Every character has a small list of tasks tied to the map. The game never spells these out, and you only notice them once you start unlocking things. These tasks can be anything from finding certain items to reaching specific spots in the environment. They add a layer of progression that sits behind the main goal. You come back to the same scenario with another character and start seeing new things appear because of how they interact with the layout. It turns each run into its own little search for what you might have missed the first time. These hidden tasks give the game more replay value than you might expect. If you want everything, you end up running the same scenario with a wide range of characters. Each run shows you something different, either because of what that character can do or because of the task tied to them. It builds a loop where the game encourages you to rotate through the cast and get a feel for how each person fits into the outbreak.
You can't give up.
The cast also shapes the tone of the game. They look and move like everyday people, like I've mentioned. You can picture their lives before the outbreak. Some carry themselves like they've dealt with rough moments before. Others feel out of place from the moment you see them. These details help the scenarios feel grounded. You're not stepping into the shoes of well-trained heroes. You're picking up from a group that feels pulled into something they didn't expect. And their specialties feel like extensions of their lives rather than special traits. Once you settle into that system, the characters become one of the more interesting parts of the game, because the game lets their mechanics do most of the storytelling. You can feel the difference between them as soon as you move around or interact with the environment. That difference keeps the scenario fresh, and it gives you a reason to explore every map with more than one approach. The more you switch between characters, the clearer the systems become. Outbreak's lineup is people who were already part of the city before everything went wrong. Each one deals with the situation in their own way, and the game reflects that through their movements and abilities, and even their hidden tasks. That structure adds a surprising amount of depth and keeps the replay loop alive long after you finish your first run.
Thing's too huge. These 9mm are useless.
Almost got him. Hold on.
Calm down. You must give me your blood.
Hey, something's wrong.
So, let's regain our distance then.
What the?
When you look at Outbreak from a distance, the idea behind it's clear. The game was built around online co-op during a time when that kind of setup was still developing. The PS2 had online features, but they weren't consistent for everyone, and a lot of people had different hardware situations. Some had adapters, some didn't. Connection quality depended on where you lived and what kind of internet you had. The game expected a level of stability that wasn't present across most households. Outbreak relied heavily on teamwork, and the lack of voice chat had a real impact on how the game felt. The preset lines helped to a point, but they never filled the gap the way real-time communication would have. You're moving through scenarios that require coordination, and the tools you have for that feel thin. You're constantly reading body movement and guessing intentions. The game needed something more robust to bring the idea together, and the hardware of the time only offered so much. The load times and connection drops also shaped the experience. People in older forums and reviews talk about wading through long transitions and dealing with occasional interruptions. These moments cut into the game's pacing. A scenario that's meant to feel tense or urgent becomes a little softer around the edges when the technical side steps in. The system requirements for smooth play were pretty steep for the average person in 2003 or 2004. The overall ambition of Outbreak created a gap between what the game aimed for and what the hardware could support. The citywide disaster setup, the co-op focus, the scenario structure, and the ideas of players working together in real time all rely on a stable online network. That network didn't exist in a reliable way for most console people. You can feel the weight of that limitation when you look back at it. Reviews at the time focused on a lot of these issues. They pointed out the network inconsistencies, the communication hurdles, and the performance dips. These problems overshadowed what the game was trying to push forward. The concept of regular people trying to survive in a shared horror experience was strong, and the mechanics leaned into that idea. The technical side kept the game from reaching its full potential, though. I really feel like Outbreak came a generation too early. I think about how well it might have fit on later hardware, like the Xbox 360 and PS3. Those generations had stronger online support, a much smoother matchmaking, and built-in voice chat systems. Outbreak would have benefited from that environment. The idea of people teaming up to manage infection levels, shared items, and react to unpredictable situations fits naturally in the online frameworks those consoles offered. The game feels like it belongs in that era more than the one it launched in. Outbreak sits in a strange place. The core idea shows a clear potential, and the scenario set up a good foundation for co-op survival horror. The technical limitations held it back, though. The game pushed forward with a design that needed more support than the platform could provide. When you look at the ambition behind it, it becomes easier to see what the team was trying to build and why it landed the way it did. Outbreak ended up becoming a title people talked about for years, mostly because of the concept that sits underneath the surface. The game shows a path Resident Evil could have taken. It experimented with online survival during a time when that idea didn't have a solid footing. The experience you get from playing it today carries that mix of strong design choices and technical limits. The gap between them create a very specific feeling that really defines the game.
If I keep walking, can I awake from this dream?
One of the big things that stands out the most is how much of the industry it seemed to anticipate. The game leaned into co-op survival years before that idea took off. It treated teamwork as a core mechanic instead of an add-on. You had shared resources, shared pressure, infection timers, and enemies that pushed the group instead of a single character. That setup felt unusual at the time, and the industry didn't have many games doing things like that. A lot of the co-op horror games that came later built their identity around group survival. You see systems built on trust, panic, and quick decision-making. Outbreak had those pieces in place early on. It pushed the idea that horror changes when more than one person's involved. The fear becomes a shared responsibility. Every mistake affects the whole group, and every smart play gives everyone a bit more breathing room. That approach shows up in later multiplayer games, and people often bring Outbreak up when talking about where those ideas might have started. The structure of the scenarios also helps shape how people remember the game. Each location feels like a different corner of the city collapsing. People still talk about the way Outbreak handled tone, how it let you step into small stories inside a larger disaster. That style of design ended up showing up in future games that use segmented missions or isolated chapters to build a broader narrative. Outbreak didn't get as much credit for that at the time, but the influence is easy to see. One thing that keeps the game relevant is there's a community that still plays it. There's a group who run it on original hardware through private servers. Some people use emulation to play online with others. It's a small scene, but it's active, and that says a lot. People wouldn't go through the effort of setting all that up if the concept didn't leave a strong impression. They return because the game has a very specific feel that newer games just don't have. The teamwork, the limited resources, the scenario layout, and the tension created by simple mechanics all come together in a way that feels unique. The fans who stick with Outbreak do a lot to keep its memory alive. They trade strategies, run events, and share footage of online sessions. Some people never had the chance to play it online when it first released, and these community servers give them a way to experience what the game was built for. That dedication shows how much the idea meant to people. It reinforces the sense that Outbreak wasn't forgotten because it failed. It stayed in the background because technology moved slower than the ambition behind it. And again, Outbreak raises the question of what would this idea look like on stronger hardware? The game came out at a time when online play on consoles wasn't stable for everyone. Modern matchmaking, voice chat, and consistent network features would have supported the co-op design in a cleaner way. I feel like the concept fits better in a later generation. The game's design lines up with features that became standard years later. When all of this is put together, it becomes clear why people still talk about Outbreak. It introduced ideas that didn't fully land in its own time, but those ideas didn't disappear. They showed up in other games, sometimes openly and sometimes quietly. Outbreak sits in the middle of that shift, and players who remember it carry that connection forward. The game matters because it reflects a moment where the series tried something new. It reached for a version of survival horror built around teamwork and unpredictability. Even now, people look back on it with a mix of appreciation and curiosity about what it could have been. Conversations around Outbreak haven't faded, and the community still shows up for it. That alone says the concept had strength.
How unreliable the memory is. I remember remember my acquaintance, but I cannot remember myself. Yet I feel something will change dramatically when I know everything.
If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you for spending some time with me. The fact that you all sit through these entire videos, it really means a lot to me. If you enjoyed this one, consider subbing if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next one. There's already a lot of content on the channel like this, and there's still a lot more coming. I'm trying to build something that keeps these games alive and gives them the space they deserve. But drop a like or a comment and let me know your history with Outbreak. Or if this is your first time seeing it, let me know what you thought about it. I read every comment and I try to respond to a lot of them. It helps the channel more than you think, and it gives me a better idea of what you want to see covered in the future. And for anyone watching on mobile, consider hitting the hype button. It gives the video hype points, which essentially tells the algorithm, hey, this video is good, show it to more people. It's a way you can directly help grow the video and the channel. It's only available for the first 7 days of the video's live, so if you get here after that, a simple like will still help a lot. But thank you again for being here, and as always, I'll see y'all later.